My name's Rob Stoneman. I'm the Chief Executive of the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. Thanks for listening to this presentation. What we want to do now is talk to you about the new proposed visitor centre at Spurn Point National Nature Reserve. Been a lot of discussion about the centre, mostly positive, but some negative feedback as well. And really wanted to try and get across where the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust is coming to, why we're so keen to have a visitor centre and why we've cited it in that particular location. Also want to get across why we're really passionate and excited about this project. Let's start with the current way we manage Spurn. So fundamental to us, of course, is the management of the wildlife, and we have a management plan agreed by Natural England. Spurn is a special area of conservation, a special protection area, a site of special scientific interest, a Ramsar site, a geological conservation reserve site on a heritage coast, and has listed buildings. It has pretty much every designation that you can throw at it. So some really important habitats that we can manage. It's one of the only dune systems in Yorkshire, important meadows, big scrub communities that are important for passerine birds and so on, the mud flats, the salt marsh. So there's some critical elements to that. We need to reduce the disturbance of visitors. So visitors come to the site, lots of visitors, and they can accidentally disturb the site, particularly if they're in 4x4s or they're taking their dogs or they're wild camping and so on. So we obviously have to stop all of those sorts of activities. Just a few examples here of what we're trying to do. For example, the eelgrass beds can be affected by bait digging, so we have a partnership agreement with the bait diggers to allow bait digging in particular areas, but not on the eelgrass beds. We need to look after the safe places for the birds to roost, particularly the waders. It's really important that they have safe roosting areas, and they can be very easily affected by disturbance from visitors. Also places for breeding birds, and again, we think that some of the places that we should have breeding birds on, we don't have. For example, little terns on the end of the point, probably because of visitors accidentally disturbing the breeding grounds. So there's an awful lot of management work to do, and a lot of it is around visitor management. We also have some really important tenants on site. So we have the Bird Observatory. They've been at the Warren Cottage since 1946, and our future plans is to keep working with them. The RNLI, another part of the shipping story at Spurn. So they have their lifeboat station on the end of Spurn. It means they can get out to sea very, very quickly. It'd be a lot further than if they were, say, based at Grimsby and so on. And also Associated British Ports, really important this, because they're controlling about a third of all of the trade, all of the ship trade into Britain is coming through the Humber estuary. At one time, before the storm surge, they had their pilot boats based at Spurn. They still have their radar station there, and a big part of our plans is to incorporate the radar station into the visitor centre. And then the third part of the management, probably a really critical part, is the visitors coming. So we have at least 20,000 visitors. It's declined a lot since the storm surge. We were running at probably 45 to 50,000 visitors before the storm surge. At its peak we had 70,000 visitors. But whether it's 20,000, 30,000, 70,000, that's a lot of people we have to manage. And there's sort of three main elements to that. One, it has to be a safe visit, of course. It's not a particularly safe site. We've got tides washing across, we've got brown-tailed moss that can irritate your skin, we've got dangerous structures and so on. So we have to do a lot of helping people to visit the site safely. We have to inform people. People want to have an informed visit. It's an amazing story at Spurn, and we need to give people an informed visit. And above all else, of course, an enjoyable visit. That's why people get there. So we need good facilities to enable all of that. And if we're honest, we don't have the facilities in place. We don't have good enough facilities to provide that safe, informed and enjoyable visit. And all of that has been made worse by the storm surge in December 2013. That washed away the roads. There's no access by cars down to the point anymore, so it's just four-wheel drives only, and really can't take that many four-wheel drives like that. Visitor numbers, as I say, have dropped from about 45,000 to 20, maybe 30,000 visitors at best. The logistics of running that site are much harder, and clearly the cars are now parking at the top of the site in what is a completely inadequate situation. So we've got a very random mess really of visitors at the moment. We're worried, we're concerned about the disturbance to wildlife, we're concerned about the safety to visitors. We need to impart our messages much, much betterly, and I really don't think that visitors are getting an informed visit. We need to manage this situation much, much better now that the storm surge has taken the road away. So we're putting in a big investment programme into Spurn. We're restoring the lighthouse, putting a new viewing platform in down at the peninsula. We've invested in a four-wheel drive bus, effectively, the Unimog, to provide Unimog safaris, so that if you can't walk or cycle down, you can get onto the bus. And at the heart of this vision is the new visitor centre. This will be a cafe, an information centre, a classroom, we'll have toilets, and adjacent to it will be the car park. From here we can manage access, we can give people the necessary health and safety information, we can crucially tell people about this amazing story that is Spurn, about its geomorphology, about climate change, about dynamic coasts, about its wildlife, about its shipping, about its military history and so on. And we can enable people to have a really enjoyable visit. I think above all else we want Spurn to be an amazing outdoor classroom. We want to be educating about 3,000, maybe 5,000 school children coming through Spurn every year to learn about this fantastic place. Spurn is on the national curriculum. Every person who does a geography GCSE will come across Spurn. Wouldn't it be great to be able to visit it properly? Now all of that requires staffing, of course, and we're putting that into place. A new manager, a new catering visitor services to take over the Bluebell Cafe. A new heritage officer came in last year, and we want to run a whole series of apprenticeships or traineeships. And of course all of that costs, and we'll recoup some of that cost. So we'll recoup some of it through charging for the car park, through selling food in the cafe, through selling merchandise, books and bird feed and so on in the shop, by charging people to go up the lighthouse, and by taking membership. We don't think we're going to recoup all of the costs. We think we'll have to invest in Spurn as we invest in any other nature reserves to the tune of between £20,000 and £30,000 a year. So it's a very exciting future with the visitor centre in the middle of it. It finally gives us the ability to give people to that safe visit, that informed visit, that enjoyable visit, and above all else a visit that doesn't disturb the fragile wildlife on site. Let me just talk about why we chose the particular place that we want to site the visitor centre. We went through an options appraisal, so let's have a look at some of the options that we went through. We started with Kilnsea Wetlands. It's off Spurn, just slightly to the north of it. It's actually not ours, we lease it, and it's leased because it's a management realignment site. So it's a compensation for eventual loss of beacon lagoons. And crucially, it's not on Spurn, so it doesn't really work for us for a whole host of reasons. We had to dismiss Kilnsea Wetlands very early on. Our initial thoughts was a site called Clubley's Pond. It's up on the cliff, great views of the Humber estuary and of the sea. Unfortunately, Clubley's Pond, as we can see by this series of maps here, is very likely to be affected by coastal erosion in relatively soon, actually. So if we had built a visitor centre up there, we would probably see its foundations being eroded between about 20 to 30 years' time. So too soon to build a visitor centre. You simply wouldn't put that sort of investment in place. So we had to dismiss that. Coastal erosion, of course, is a really pertinent issue for us. The shoreline management plan suggests that the shoreline will align itself along the current line of the Kilnsea flood defence by about 2055. Crucially, Environment Agency have no intention to maintain that flood defence, which gives us about a 20 to 50 year window for managing assets in that area. So at some point, buildings will have to come down, or buildings will have to be moved as part of the rollback policies that are set out in the local East Riding Plan. And for this reason, the Bluebell is also not adequate for a visitor centre. In fact, we just commissioned an evaluation of that building, and they concluded, the architects who did that work concluded that there was a huge financial risk. The building has a very short lifespan, that it was almost impossible to mitigate for the flooding that might happen in the Bluebell. It was flooded quite badly in 2013, and that actually we're very, very unlikely to receive planning permission to convert that into a visitor centre for a whole host of different reasons, mainly linked to the flooding issues. So actually what we've plumbed for is this triangular area. So it's the fields to the south of Kilnsea Road. It's protected by the existing flood defences, but it's still in a flood zone. So the advantages of building a new centre is we can design into the building ways to incorporate flooding, and even ways to move that building when those sites become untenable due to coastal change. Now within that area, again, a fairly detailed options appraisal was undertaken. So we looked at the Wellfield, just south of the village. A couple of reasons why that's not suitable. Firstly, it is right next to the village. The Heritage Coast policies are pretty clear. No new buildings in the vernacular of Kilnsea village, so that really wouldn't work. More crucially for us as a wildlife trust is that the fields around the Wellfield and Wellfield itself are used by passage migrants, particularly Wimborough. And they like big open fields. So as a wildlife trust, we probably wouldn't count as a garden shed in the wellfield, let alone a visitor centre. So that's an absolute no-no for us. Another site is the Canal Scrape car park. It's an existing area of hard standing. Actually not a bad location, but it would have meant we'd have to remove an awful lot of scrub. And you can replant the scrub, of course, but it grows slowly. So there's been a lot of disturbance in that particular site. So what we've actually gone for is a small triangular field next to the Canal Scrape. It's the perfect place to manage the visitors, and that's a critical part of our thinking behind this new visitor centre. We've got a place to put the car park adjacent to it, so that works really well. No scrub loss whatsoever, so very limited habitat loss. Nevertheless, we're still going to plant 4 hectares of scrub as part of this development. And crucially, and I think it's rather nicely done, is that the ground floor is screened by existing banks and bunds that were built as a result of building the Humber flood defences and the Canal Scrape that was done many decades ago. So it's kind of the perfect location. In fact, it's the only location to put the visitor centre in at Spurn. We've been doing quite a lot of consultation. So we started this consultation process very early, and boy, we've had a fair few comments on this, and we need to take some of those concerns quite seriously. So, for example, parking is one concern. Well, look, the current situation is a mess. There's no question of that. The pub car park, which was a public car park, has now been taken back by the pub, so that's no longer a public car park. The Bluebell car park is going to be lost to coastal erosion within 10 years, maybe 15 years or so. And the Warren car park as well, which is actually just a bit of random hard standing, will also be lost to coastal erosion at some point in the future. So we need to sort out car parking whatever we do, but the point that many people have said, it's not fair for people that live in the local area to pay to park in their local area. We think that's a fair point. So what we're going to have is free to members, free to the people that live in the Easington ward, i.e. Easington Village and Kilnsea Village. That's absolutely right. So another concern that has come up through the consultation is disturbance to wildlife. Well, we're a wildlife trust. Last thing we want to do is disturb wildlife. So we've employed ecological consultants to look at this issue really in some depth. We're doing structured bird surveys in the area. We've been analysing moths and bats and reptiles and all the rest of it. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. It's the least disturbing option in terms of the landscape, in terms of any removal of scrub or destruction of habitat and so on. It's also the least disturbing in terms of disturbing birds, particularly those passage migrants. So we're having a look at all of those, and in fact what we're trying to do is to generate an option where disturbance is very low. We've done that, but more importantly the proposal will improve the current situation, because we're not happy with the current situation. We've got all the people, all the cars, all the visitors congregating now at the Warren, the narrowest point at the entrance to the peninsula. So it's a crazy situation now. We're trying to bring that back, control the whole situation much better. The third concern was about disturbance that, messing up the landscape scene. I've got great sympathy with that. And there's a view that you shouldn't build any facilities south of the Kilnsea Road, and perhaps that's the way forward. The problem for us is that we have to manage those visitors, so we're going to have to do something. We need to make sure those visitors have a safe, informed and enjoyable visit, and that requires some sort of facility. So what we've tried to do is to make sure that the building that we've proposed blends into the landscape as much as we possibly can. So for example, some people were saying, when they looked at the initial drawings that the architects had come up with, it had kind of zinc cladding, had people wandering around on the roof. We agree, that's not really great in the landscape. So there's no access to the roof now, it's a green roof, so we've taken those views on board. And we've also, instead of having zinc cladding, we'd have weatherwall wood cladding, so it's going to blend into that maritime landscape much better. And of course you won't be able to see the ground floor from most of the places on Spurn. A couple other things that have come out through the consultation, which really were actually really only on the architect's drawings. So a bridge across the canal, a barrier across the road, they were never going to happen, they're never going to be, so you can just not worry about those at all. I think we also have to think about what happens if we don't have a centre, because of course that's a real possibility. We don't get planning permission or we don't take this project forward. And of course, you know, we can shoulder on in the face of climate change, in the face of coastal change. You know, we'll try to continue with education provision at the site because we think that's really important. We could perhaps do that through the existing Bluebell building. And we can manage the site with perhaps one member of staff and a few trainees, and just more or less how we're managing at the moment. But that site's going to become increasingly hazardous. The car parking will disappear entirely. That means you're going to have people parking in the village itself. So I guess in the end we have a choice. The community that is Spurn, the people that visit Spurn, the businesses that benefit from Spurn, the people that live around here, the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, we have a choice of what we want to do. We could invest in Spurn, or we could just manage its decline. We could manage the shifting coastline and allow Spurn to decline and degrade. And in the end, I guess Kilnsea becomes yet another one of the lost villages of East Riding. I don't think that's the right way forward. I think we should give Spurn a brighter future, a more passionate and exciting future, a future that secures its wildlife value and secures its benefits for people for many, many years to come.